it's been really bothering me that, you know, my slap shifter hasn't been installed yet, and, you know, little odds and ends like my gas pedal, you know, throttle linkage, all these easy things. They're not really that crazy, but they're just a little time consuming. They're all on the list of stuff to get done. I'm getting down, the list is getting pretty small. I mean, obviously I keep running into new things as I go, but right now there's about 5 serious things that need done, the wiring being one of them. But that's not going to be in this video. That's going to be a whole other monster that I'm not looking forward to. But I self-tapped this shifter in first just to kind of get it where I wanted, and then one by one I took the self-tappers out and drilled real holes to bolt it in. And this sucker's in the floor, you know, pretty strong, and it's right on top of, you know, it's double layered in that area, the floor, so it's super sturdy. Like, it's probably just as sturdy as the seats are, if not more. But I got it in there nice and you know, what I did is I put a pair of vice grips on the top bolt, that way I could get under there and, you know, tighten them by myself, because you gotta make things work like that when you're working alone. But yeah, this process was, even though I had the vice grips, it was still kind of a pain in the ass, because I had to reach up over the drive shaft and all that fun stuff. Now this thing was a little it was kind of complicated to put back together, mounted on the floor. There were little pins and screws, but I didn't really focus too hard on that. I just kind of show you the quick version, because it's not a tutorial on how to put these together. But yeah, you know, routing the wire was kind of a pain.
Reverse.
I had to film this just so I could see how it worked while I yelled out what I was doing.
Neutral. Neutral. Reverse. Park.
It's a little stiff, you know. It's not working as smooth as I'd like it to, but I'm going to do some more adjustments on it, and I've done more adjustments on it since this video. But it was a little rough. It took some adjusting and some playing with it, but it's a lot better now. I never did a fuel pump before. To be honest, as embarrassing as this is to admit, I always just thought a fuel pump was in a gas tank. I didn't even realize it was on the side of the engine, because I've never done this before, and I've never built an engine before. I've never done any of this. I've never hooked up a shifter. You know, this is all my first time doing all this, which I'm glad I'm doing it. Like I say in every episode, it's a great experience. But I learned that by putting the long bolt in the side, one of the bolts that come with the fuel pump itself, it'll hold that shaft up in there where you want it until you get some of the other bolts in. I didn't have to use one of the chrome bolts that came with the pump itself, because I just had other bolts already. I had the same size bolts laying around, so I was able to just take another bolt and jam that thing in there so that it holds it in perfect placement. But I mean, this is very self-explanatory. I figured I'd show it because, you know, I hear a lot of people having trouble with these because of the shaft falling down. and I figured I'd share that little tip. But it's really not, anything crazy. And I got this chrome plated seal here, but the pump itself isn't chrome. I like to break everything up. I like to have the black, the chrome, the orange, and some of the dull look as well. Like the tunnel ram, it matches this. But there's a lot going on this engine. But I think it works out. I put all these in there, if you're wondering, just to make sure it was lined up perfectly, so when I don't have to fiddle around with it while I was putting the fuel pump in, because if these bolts don't line up perfectly, it's a big pain in the ass. So yeah, as you can see, it has like the dull finish. It's not chrome, but breaks it up perfectly. It's as simple as that. It's literally a 4-minute project. That's why I posted the video on it a couple weeks ago when I actually did it, because I figured that segment alone, might help somebody out. There's a lot of people building these small blocks and big block. It's the same for a big block as well. Pretty stoked to run the fuel line. That's one of the things on the list too. Fuel line and wiring are the two biggest things, and then bleeding the brakes, and then I can start it and run it and stop it. So yeah, I threw that old gas pedal back in. I love that big foot gas pedal. And I know a lot of people are going to say, like, man, it's off to the side. That's kind of weird, but it's comfortable with it being there. I bought a 1/4-inch rod from my hardware store for $3, steel rod for the throttle linkage. And they actually had they're not called Heim joints, but the linkage at the end, I forget the scientific name for it, but it works out. They actually had them, and they're the same ones that Rick used to put the engine together, so it all matches. And I thought about taking the carburetor linkage off and painting it black, but I figured I'd leave it orange. It matches the engine. Yeah, I'm making these marks so I know where my cut mark is and my bend marks, because as you can see, it didn't go up, the way I needed it to. It needs a little bend in it, but it's not a problem. I'll tell you what, having a hardware store, a local hardware store, has saved me thousands of dollars. No doubt. Not hundreds, but thousands. It's insane how, everything that I did in this video was, so cheap. This whole throttle linkage ended up being $5 or $6. And I have a whole half a rod left over. If I need to make more for another car, which I will be doing. But yeah, it's kind of an exaggerated bend. I end up taking a little bit of that bend back out of it, but I cut the end of this bolt off that I got for 3 cents at the hardware store, and just tack it right onto the end there, so that it all worked out. And like I said, I've never done any of this stuff before, but I don't really think you need to be a rocket scientist to do this. Like, once you know how to weld, you can pretty much do anything. And as long as your welds are strong and legitimate. I burnt this on a really hot setting because why not? It's not sheet metal, and it's not going anywhere. I did kind of weld the vice grips to the rod a little there, but that's okay. So ultimately, I just put, I fill the gaps and tack it the whole way around, and then I grind it down and grind it off, but I don't show that process because it's not necessary. But you guys get it. But yeah, I'm just stoked. These little things, they add up. They add up and turn into like a full day project, just doing a bunch of little things. Because the time to get the welder out and grind everything down, cut these little pieces off, and take your measurements. It's not a big project, and it doesn't take very long. But when you're all said and done, you do have a few hours. Like I have like a full hour into building this, and these little projects add up. And they all need done. Like, this is essential. You can't go anywhere without this $3 rod. Like, your car's not going to move without this $3 rod. So it's very important, and it's very necessary, and it's a key element to the whole project, because if this doesn't function correctly, it could be extremely dangerous. And there's the old test. Now, that's before I tightened up the linkage. That's before I tightened up the carburetors, even onto the tunnel ram. I went and I've done all that since, but I just didn't film it. And it looks sharp black. Like, that's another thing. You have to wait in between coats, and it being 12 degrees out, it took a while for it to dry in between coats, and it was like a couple hour project, but it's done. Functions perfectly, and that's exactly what I needed. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next one. We're going to start wrapping this up, guys.